where I help people look at their life, or what I call their mess, and make it their message.
Oh,
Isn't it cool?
that's cool.
And people had all these healings when they were looking at their defining moments and finding the lesson or blessing. So I thought, why not make a show,
Wow.
have some guests to talk about their lives and the different stories they started to tell themselves and how they changed their narrative and the difference that it made. So we do have an online class.
Just let you know, I have no messes.
No messes, none. It's going to be a boring show. Sorry. No, just kidding. No, really amazing. I'm just thrilled that you're on with me today, Reverend Michelle.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have an online class that's going to be starting September 7th. And I only take 9 people because we go really deep. And if you're interested in that, please reach out to me on my website at www.speakteachinspire, and we'll get you signed up for the class. So, Reverend Michelle Wadley.
Yes, sir.
Is also known as Jersey Girl. I don't think I said that right, though.
Don't. Nobody in New Jersey says that. People in Staten Island might say that. We say Jersey.
Reverend Michelle is a feisty, grounded, loving minister, teacher, mother, and proud grandmother.
Yes, very proud.
Reverend Michelle is dedicated to enriching, empowering, and guiding people's lives to live the glory of their truth. I love that. So empowering. Reverend Michelle is also the founding spiritual director of CSL North Jersey and the Planned Happiness Institute. Michelle is a lover of life, an author of the book called Forgiveness, A Promise, A Path.
A path, a promise, a way of life.
A way of life. Isn't that beautiful? Love it. So we're going to get into a little bit of that today as well. So welcome to the show, Reverend Michelle. So glad to have you.
It's fun.
Where are you?
Especially under these conditions of being here. I mean, this is really sacred ground for religious scientists, and the last place that Holmes delivered his last address. And, so it's really great doing this here. Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
Yes. And I feel like it's a full circle moment for us.
Yeah.
We first met at the Anton conference back in September.
But I had been lurking. I had been stalking you a little bit.
You were stalking me. Oh, now the truth comes out here live for the whole world to hear.
Well, there's certain people that have this like light, and there's just something that you can't quite put your finger on. And so I've been following you ever since you were at in Sacramento, the center. What was it called?
Center for Spiritual Awareness.
Center for Spiritual Awareness. So I knew who you are, and I was following your story. And then when we met. So we met in Kansas City. It felt more like, I met an old friend. That's what it felt like. We had a little love fest going on there for a minute.
And then she invited me onto the New Thought Media Network show with her right there on the site.
Yes,
and I thought that was so
right,
amazing.
We did.
And now here we are at another conference, and we're on New Thought Media Network. So glad everyone tuned in today. And I want to thank we have some people here in the meadow with us enjoying the show. Thank you.
The sun is coming out.
The sun is shining, and I have my sweater on. It's great. So, Reverend Michelle, you wrote this amazing book on forgiveness. And what I loved is I went through some of the reviews because it's on Amazon, and Frankie Timmers says of the book, she says, Michelle walks the talk. She doesn't just write and talk about forgiveness. She lives it. With her story, her life proves it. I love that statement. Can you tell us more what's behind that statement?
Oh, gosh, so much. First of all, I just wanted to do a shout out because Reverend Frankie was my ministerial teacher, so bless her. I have to pick and choose because some of the story, and I do shadow work and forgiveness work all the time, right? But that doesn't mean you necessarily want to know my whole story, because some of my story is kind of dark, and yet I'm grateful for my story. If you're listening for the first time, it might take you a minute to understand how I can say this, but I'm grateful for the abuse. Because it landed me in being a powerfully forgiving, compassionate being that I wouldn't have been without that. And please, it's not that I want anybody to go through that.
Right.
I
No.
mean, God knows.
No.
But what happens is a lot of my students, a lot of my coaching clients, and people that come into my classes are people who have never told their story. You know, and the statistics for rape, for abuse, for sexual abuse, for children, it's so staggering that most people don't even want to look at it.
Yeah.
They don't want to look at it because
No.
it's too ugly and too dark and too painful. And, you know, often I can't even, often I find myself tearing up just talking about it, but it's a reality of life. And in my personal, my spiritual community, you know, I have never been one to shy away from those conversations because I don't want anybody to, I don't want anybody to be ignorant to what's going on under, you know, behind the scenes.
It's so true. It's so true because so many times I think people, when I've witnessed my students tell their stories, they suffer in silence.
Yeah.
They feel like they're the only one that either feels this way, experiences this, judges themselves or others. And what is left in that unseen space grows in a toxic way.
And it's a horrible reality that children that are abused, they wind up adopting shame, thinking that they did something wrong or that they didn't fight against it. And so in the forgiveness work, when I, you know, and it's very tentative. When it's somebody who's been abused, I have to work very slowly.
Yes.
I have to really gain trust.
Yeah.
But so what we do is of course, I'm going to ask them not to forgive the other because they're worthy of forgiveness, but because they want their own freedom enough that they're willing to, because forgiveness, is really about detaching from the pain.
Ooh.
That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I want to detach from that pain enough. I will stop making that person the focus of my attention. And so the forgiveness is simply a mechanism to find your freedom and to step back and step out of that. And then the students, this is the part that often surprises them. I ask them if they're willing to forgive themselves for suffering.
Ooh.
Because children, like I said, they take on the shame and they don't, and so people will judge themselves for not having done something else, not having told their mother, their grandmother, people, and this, oh my God. And I know someone listening knows what I'm talking about. I know our audience listening, somebody knows what we're talking about. Because the statistics are so high.
Yeah.
And my message, which is not eloquent in the way I say it, but the thing that matters to me is I want people to stop suffering and stop being at the mercy of the bullshit acts that were perpetrated upon them.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And so you forgive the other to find your freedom.
Yeah.
But then you forgive yourself because we've suffered.
Yeah.
We've lied to ourselves.
Yes.
My father, before he died, I was one of 7.
Mm-hmm.
5 girls and 2 boys. And mine was you had to be hardy to get to grow up in my household.
Yeah, if it wasn't falling off, you're okay. Right?
Well, and my mother was I mean, no disrespect to anybody in recovery, but my mother was a downright alcoholic, a sloppy, awful, and my father was, the abuser. And out of the 5 girls, everyone was abused, and then some of the grandchildren. And so the household was hard. But here's the interesting thing. I had a spiritual teacher that got introduced, and that's a little long story, so I won't bring it up here. But myself and my family were introduced to a spiritual teacher who started teaching me forgiveness at a young age.
Right.
Young.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started cutting the cord between my abuse, my father, and myself at a very young age. I was really, really blessed. Wow. Meanwhile, my sisters who didn't have that, most of them became alcoholics and played with drugs and did a lot of hard stuff to themselves. So to be able to start that early was an incredible blessing. It was an incredible blessing. But what happens, it wasn't until my father had a stroke and that he could no longer speak that my sisters found out about each other.
Nobody knew. It was the family secret.
I happened to know, but because I came 10 years after the last one, so I
Right.
was almost like a single child.
Right.
Yeah, single child.
Yeah.
And they didn't know about each other.
Wow.
So they suffered for decades in silence.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Secrecy is not okay when it comes to abuse, folks.
It's not.
And
No.
it's ugly, but
No.
speak it out.
And talking about speaking it out, Reverend Michelle, what would you say to someone who has this secret and they haven't spoken it out? What support, what inspiration, what coaching could you give them?
Me specifically? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do. I have a number of people who have gone through my forgiveness coaching course. So we have coaches available. I have coaching. Yeah. I do coaching. We have forgiveness courses, and we have the book.
Right.
We have a variety of things. And if nothing else, if that's too direct for the listener, then and if find a seasoned, practiced practitioner. Mm-hmm. I mean, psychotherapy is okay, mm-hmm. but the one thing about what we do in Science of Mind and in the metaphysical world mm-hmm. is that while we're speaking to the issue, we're also speaking from an authority that doesn't necessarily come into play very often in therapy.
Right.
So you can. Sorry, getting on my soapbox.
No, it's okay. That's why you're here.
Because one of the things we suffer in silence, and some of that we can take care of at a very conscious level. But I want to tell you that some of this is not your fault, and none of it's your fault. It's responsibility, but not your fault. But what happens is a lot of the suffering sinks into our subconscious, and it sinks in at a cellular level. Now they're starting to, give more language to this with the neurosciences and such, and rewiring the messages in the brain, but it's not simple.
No,
it's not simple, and it has to be repeated, and it has to be done deeply. And this is what I love about prayer. Prayer sinks into places where nothing else can go. Right?
It works at a higher level.
It's higher and deeper and more complete, because
mm-hmm.
it actually, and the one thing, and I'm going to just say what I think here, but, mm-hmm. and I don't mean any disrespect to how we've trained our practitioners, but I don't think we've given enough training to the power of the subconscious mind. See, my early days, I was a hypnotist.
Oh, wow.
So fantastic. I understand I understand where the messages live in the subconscious, and I understand a little bit more about how to get to it, because we can't just pray from everything is good and everything is lovely and everything is fine. It has to be, I declare that right now, deep within the place where my subconscious is, that the stories, the pain, the suffering, the beliefs, that all of it is uprooted, cast out, neutralized, never again to be of any authority in my life. Now, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's a very common forgiveness prayer.
And I love that prayer. And actually, I have my own story of demonstration, very similar around prayer. And this was before I was a practitioner and I was studying. I remembered I had started my own journey of healing around addiction. And my addiction was very different from my father. My father was an alcoholic. He died of cirrhosis. I mean, it was very severe. And I remember being in my backyard and having this enlightened moment where I realized that he was just as innocent as I was.
Yes.
That there wasn't really a villain here, but I knew that a piece of him lived in me, and if I was ever going to accept me, I needed to forgive him.
Yeah.
And so I simply said to Spirit, you can't
be righteous and be free.
Right. You can't be righteous and be free. I love that. And so I said to Spirit, I said, I don't know how to forgive him. He was already on the other side of the veil. He was already transitioned, but show me how. So, and it wasn't just the words, it was the sincerity of the intention.
Intention is everything with this work. Yeah. Everything.
And then all of a sudden I went to go see my cousin, and she had pulled out pictures of my dad. She loved my dad. It was her favorite uncle. And I'm like, oh, I had a different experience of him. Right. But she told me a different side of him. And all of a sudden this healing journey just unfolded right below my feet.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to understand my father in a way I would have never had an opportunity if I hadn't said that prayer.
One of the things that we do in the book, we get to a place, and I have a set of presuppositions that I use. And part of that is that we each have within us, this is not new, but it's a critical part of this work, that we have within us a place that has never been hurt, harmed, or injured in any way. That's real. You can't interrupt that. No abuse can interrupt it. No addictions can interrupt it. But if you don't remember it's there, so you have to remember it's there, and you have to like hook into it, because that's what you did without knowing.
Yes.
You connected to that place of innocence and purity. And here's the thing. So in the courses that we teach, I'll ask people to get in touch with that place of innocence and purity. And then, people will come along and they'll say, yeah, okay, I can believe that. And I said, what about your perpetrator?
Ooh, were they innocent too? And what happened to them? And in fact, in my own unfolding journey, I learned that my father, after he had come back from World War II, he was a Marine Raider. He had to kill people without making a sound. And after he came back from the war,
can you imagine what that did to his
he was never the same. And I never knew that, right? All I had was a 7-year-old version of my father. And now I have all this empathy. I know, I have all this empathy of what this did to him.
Because he had to shut off all of that to survive.
All of it.
And that's what we do. So it's like we're a little kid, right? And something happens to us, and we don't know what to do with it. But the next day we have to get up and go to school. So we take whatever happened the day before or the night before. We kind of squash it down, and then we go to school again, and we just keep going, and then something else happens, and then we do the same thing. So we are all walking around trying to function on a boatload of dysfunction.
Oh yeah,
a boatload of dysfunction.
A boatload. And I don't know what it was like for you as a kid, but when I tried to talk about the fighting that was going on in my home, at school, to teachers, they didn't want to hear it. It was almost like, don't tell me. Don't tell, like they just shut it down. And all of a sudden I got the message, oh, I can't talk about this. I mean, so painful, the messages.
I am grateful that we have that as a society, not everywhere, obviously not everywhere, but as a society, we are maturing. As a society, the conversations around emotional health, emotional healing, emotional maturity, all of that's now been more normalized.
Thank
and God bless Ted Lasso.
I know, right? If you haven't checked out Ted Lasso, very metaphysical.
Because they have normalized men having feelings and men having breakdowns. And they've normalized anxiety, and they've normalized things that should be normalized because it's happening everywhere. I speak to people. I say I can hardly do this. I can hardly share this with you without tearing up, because I have people that someone will go to a practitioner or a counselor and they can't quite handle somebody's story, so they'll say, call Michelle, right? Now I can, but I got to tell you, it takes all of me, because I have people telling me about things that happened to them or happened to their grandchildren. And
it's a lot of space to hold. And the thing is, if you can't hold it, don't feel bad about that.
Find somebody who can.
But have a compassionate response, and let people know that this is a lot for you to hold, and to help them get to somebody that can help hold it for them.
I don't know why I can. Maybe I actually don't even know why I can. I mean, I do get emotional. I don't try to be strong. Like if you were to come to me and you tell me a story, I don't try to act like, oh, I'm okay. No, I'm going to cry. I will cry right there with you, because I think not to makes me too staid and unavailable. And then, but I can easily, the beautiful thing, what I've learned to do, and I just feel like this is God's gift to me. I'm able to not stay attached to your pain, and I'm able to not make your perpetrator wrong, because the more convinced I am that your perpetrator is wrong, how can I support you in letting go of the pain and the suffering? I have to be able to see the innocence 3 times down or more.
Yes, you have to see through the condition into, because I think it is true. Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, what
but
we
it's
say in the-
easy. It's easy not to feel that or see that when you're the one that's going through the trauma or the break.
The thing we say in the
going
course
on.
is hurt people, but healed people love. Just make it
Healed
simple.
people love. I love that. I love that. Well, we're going to take a quick break here for a couple announcements, but don't you go anywhere. We're going to get into this book a little bit more and some of the defining moments where Michelle's story took a turn to the work and the healing that she's doing today. We'll be right back.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Where so many
Welcome back to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. We have a live audience here. Let's hear it, everybody. I know, isn't this great? Oh my gosh, I feel so grateful. Thank you for coming out. And in the book, Michelle, you have a moment where you tell your story in the beginning, and there's just one part where you said, I finally said enough to the pain, primarily because it was caused by my self-judgment and self-deprecating habits. This launched me into a search for peace, for healing. I needed to show up for my sons, myself, and my child I was about to have. It took me years to peel off the pain of the shame, the guilt, and the anger. Can you tell us about that moment where you said enough?
I get emotional.
I know. Let's just breathe for Reverend Michelle. That moment.
It's interesting when you hear your own words read out loud. I was leaving I had chosen to leave my husband. My first, I've only had 2 husbands. I don't make it sound like there was a whole crowd. I was choosing to leave my husband, and although we were very conscious and we left each other very lovingly, it was really, he's still part of my family. He and his new wife, we're family,
right,
you know.
Right.
But there was a moment where it wasn't okay. You know, there were some moments, and I can remember going down in the living room one night and laying on the couch and just like one of those ugly cries, those ugly sobbing snot running down your face kind of cries, you know. And I'm laying there and I knew in the moment, because every moment, whether we realize it or not, every moment is a choice. Every moment has a fork, every single moment. And thank you, God. Thank you, God, for my training. Thank you, God. I knew in that moment that I could either go down the road of I'm going to be dead. My life sucks. I'm not completely unworthy. But instead, I turned my attention to this little voice. It was literally not like a crazy person, but there was this voice that said, "There's something worth saving in you." I know. And I grabbed that one. I grabbed that voice because that was the one that then, it was hard. It was really hard. I was pregnant. But I believed it. I believed that there was still something in me worth saving. And I kept listening for that voice and following that voice. There was a moment, I have 3 sons, and my oldest son, I love him dearly, but I've always called him my interesting son. Code for whatever you want to make that. But we're actually very close now. I love him. But there was a time it wasn't that way. And it was a lot to handle. And he had left home, and he, through a whole variety of things, he landed in a state penitentiary in South Dakota for a year and a half. And now I'm home. I'm divorced. I'm just had my third child, and not a pot to piss in. I don't even know if I had a car that was working at the time.
Wow.
And I find out my son's in jail. I don't have the understanding, the wherewithal, the education, or the money to help. So there I was, a couple thousand miles away, just in this helpless state. And he would call, and the calls never went. I mean, sometimes they'd go okay for a couple of moments, but the calls always landed in, basically everything in his life was my fault. No, and I can understand that, right? I get it. Like, I'm not even arguing against that or defending myself.
Right.
But that continued for quite a while, and then after he got out, he'd come home for visits, and the visits were rough. They were rough because I had these hooks on me, the guilt and the shame of what a lousy mother I was, and he would hang on those hooks. So I'm home one day, and this goes back to your story before about the intention when you spoke about your father. So in my house, and I set up a little ritual for myself, and I had some candles, and I had a few people that I had to forgive and let go of. So I do the ritual, and then basically not very religious scientist of me, I beseeched God.
Wow.
And I said, God, I need the grace. I need to be graced because I knew, all of me knew that I couldn't be in the pain and the shame and love him simultaneously. They couldn't be contained in the same space. And I beseeched God, and God responded. And there was this veil, that kind of warm veil that kind of moved over me. And I'm telling you, miraculously, a whole measurement, a whole boatload of that pain and that shame was lifted. Wow. And then the next time I engaged him, the hooks weren't gone, but they were profoundly reduced.
Wow.
Profoundly. Wow. So then I had more patience, more understanding, more forgiveness, more love. But I had to give it up to God. I had to give it up to God because on my own, I didn't have the capacity.
Isn't that interesting how there's another place to go with our pain, with our feeling lost and not knowing what to do? I always tell people, help me is a complete prayer. Don't ever feel bad. To do
help me, show me, tell
me, show me.
Yeah.
Like they were, and it's really about the intention.
Yeah, those are very courageous prayers. There's a beautiful book. I don't remember the name of the author. Maybe somebody will put it in the chat if they know it online. And it's Praying Dangerously. It is a beautiful prayer. And she says in that book, when you say, thy will be done, get the hell out of the way. Get out of the way. Because when you say thy will be done, that is a place of total surrender. That's surrender. And then you have to get out of the way. It's a beautiful book. I highly recommend it, especially for practitioners. Regina Sarah Ryan. Yeah, beautiful book, Praying Dangerously.
I love that.
It's a wonderful thing.
And Michelle Davis says, how do you detach from the client's pain when you're in the empathy mode?
Oh, great question. Because I work from high truth. And what I know is no one can harm you. Not in the place of high truth, not the you that matters, not the you that is the I am that exists. That the I am of us has always existed. It will always exist, right? Nothing can touch that. It is the human part, right? It's the human part we have to deal with. So why, when working with a client, I'm so hooked into their heart center, their I am place. What was her name? I'm sorry, Shay. I'm so hooked into their I am place, and that place where they have never been hurt, harmed, or injured in every way, that everything I do is to get the client to stop believing their story and to believe in that place of purity and innocence that lives in every single one of us. Saying it to you makes it sound kind of easy. I've been doing this for decades. I mean, I've been, they say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something.
True.
I have put in my time.
Yes.
I have studied other teachers, other forgiveness books. I mean,
Yes.
I've been around, this work.
I love what you said about getting them to change their story, and I too,
which is your thing.
Right? I do a lot of coaching as well, and what I've noticed with some clients, it's almost like, and I'd love your response on this, some people, their story now, even though it's toxic, is providing like a secondary benefit. Like the woman who was divorced 30 years ago but talks about it like it happened last month, gets empathy every time she plays the victim in that role. How do you deal with that when you come up against someone who's kind of attached to their story? It's providing them some kind of benefit.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I've been a practitioner now for a while and a minister, and I've been doing this work for the bulk of my life, to be honest, even prior to having any kind of label attached to it. Mm-hmm. Wait. Re-ask the question. I got a little lost.
Well, when somebody is attached to their story,
okay,
it's a negative story, but it's providing a benefit, like attention or.
I forgot where I was going.
Yeah, no.
So people don't call me unless they want to give it up.
Sometimes people think they want to give it up.
Right. But I'm telling you, people that reach out to me, they're done.
Oh, they're to that point.
They're done. They're like, I'm done. And so that's why I have everything's consciousness, right? So through consciousness, I attract people that want to no longer be identified as with their pain point being their reality.
Right. Because I have also met people, and I'm sure some of our audience members and people online have met or have friends who like to story dump, trying to get the empathy or the reaction, and they keep doing it over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. What would you say to people? What would be a compassionate but boundary driven kind of response when people are in that?
I don't know. I'm a Jersey girl. I'm a little hardcore sometimes.
We'll give it to us Jersey girl style. That's what we want.
Well, basically, I would ask them: do you really want that experience? Mm. The story is creating an experience. How attached are you to that experience? I mean, you in the Planned Happiness Institute and all the classes I teach, we the way we say it is that you collude with someone's limitation, or you collaborate with their possibility.
Ooh, collude with their limitation,
or collaborate with their possibility. So I will remind them that they can't have the story and the life they want. They can't have both.
Oh, I love
Not possible.
That is so true.
And not in a cold way.
Right. No.
Because I know that religious scientists are guilty of saying, well, you created that, or what you're, what's in your consciousness. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about loving gently. Oh, I know life has been really hard, but you can have it different. Like that.
Right.
That really heartfelt place.
I love that. I also, was having some thoughts about our show coming up, and I was thinking about my own trauma history. I had 2 alcoholic parents, so lots of fun to go around. Lots of stuff. And I thought, children come in innocent, and some of us get exposed to some things. And I thought, I didn't deserve those things. I didn't deserve them. Many of them really weren't my fault, right? But I'm 100% responsible for them. And
that's a scary concept for most people.
And I can either step into my responsibility, which means my power, which is taking back my power, or I can continue the victimhood story, which I did for a long time. Mm-hmm.
I think that we should create a very important distinction here, because when it comes to responsibility, you have the world I was raised in, my original spiritual community. This is rash, folks. I'm not asking you to adopt it unless you're really ready. But we were taught and we practice that we are 100% responsible for all of our life. And it's not a popular thing, and people love to argue with me, and that's okay. Yeah. I don't need anybody to be me. There's too much of me already. But but either we can take responsibility for our lives, or we take responsibility for how we respond. But what I want to leave, the message I'd like to leave with the audience right now is that responsibility breeds power. I really want you to hear that. The more responsibility you're willing to take, the more power you can have. And you can't change something without owning it. You can't alter it without taking responsibility for it. It's not possible. So if we try to keep those things at bay, we are outside of it and outside the ability to influence the transformation. So, and which is why, I have the book on forgiveness, but that's why I do all the shadow work also. Because shadow and forgiveness, they come together.
They totally are intermingled. And even the word response ability. So Shay says, how do you yourself realize that there's a part of you that has never been hurt, harmed, or endangered? I never have understood that in New Thought.
Shay, you keep asking really powerful questions and you make me emotional because we are the divine. We are the download of some kind of divine essence. There's no way I could believe anything other than that it left its imprint within us. It left, and as Ernest Holmes refers to it, and I wish I was better at quoting him, God left its thumbprint on each of us. That thumbprint cannot be wiped away or cleaned off or anything. It's still there. It's there. It's as real and as powerful as the pain and the stories that we have adopted. And I'll say adopted because that's, they're there. We don't always have to align with them, but sometimes we do.
Yes, sometimes we do. But the way I look at it is everything's a thought before it's a thing. Everything gets its blueprint in the unseen. All physical things and us. Our blueprint started in the divine. We were a good idea in the divine. That blueprint doesn't ever go away because it's a piece of the divine and the divine's eternal. So it must always be in us.
Yeah, and the thing I just realized too, and to answer more about Shay, I've now proven it. See, at first it was a thought, but now through the work, I've worked with hundreds of people that have come through this, and they found that space. And every time someone finds that space within and they identify with it and they return to it, shift happens. And so now it was once an idea and a theory, but now it's been proven out with student after student and client after client. And sometimes it's the only thing that brings somebody peace is knowing that that's there.
Yeah. I love that. Shift happens too. Sometimes shift hits the fan when we go through our healing journey, right? Because everything starts to alchemize and rearrange itself, and anything that was part of the story that's toxic as we heal starts to fall away, and it can feel really sometimes uncertain. It can almost look scary at times, but it's the birth of higher ground that comes from forgiveness or healing or letting that old story go.
So here, let me tell you a quick story too. There was there were 4 siblings. Then there were how did it go? By the way, my mother and father thought it would be great to name all the girls with M's and all the boys with C's, so they never get our names right. So it was Mary Jane, Myrtle, Maureen, Cliffy, and then the twins, and then I came along. I think I might have forgotten somebody.
How many were there?
7.
7.
Right, good Irish family. Okay.
Well, I want to do a cliffhanger. Can we do a cliffhanger?
Oh yeah, you need a commercial. Yes,
I'm going to do a commercial. So there were 7 siblings. We're going to get into her story right after these few announcements. Don't go away. It's going to be really good. We're going to get the story. All right, come back.
I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Here and now I can see I was made beautifully. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love.
And welcome back to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. We're here with a whole live crowd of beautiful people here at the Asilomar SOAR conference, and Reverend Michelle Wadley is our guest, and she's about to tell us a little bit about her 7 siblings and a story.
Well, there's specifically about my brother Carl, who went off to Nam when I was quite young and never returned. And so for years, they thought they had he had a lazy eye, and they sent him to have it taken care of over there. Why they didn't wait to him come home. But upon his return, he was killed by friendly fire. But we didn't know that. For decades, they thought he was AWOL. So the FBI had come to our house, talking to my parents, following up, looking for him, which is weird. Just weird. Waste of energy as far as I'm concerned. And it didn't make sense because he was known in his platoon as not a coward, as somebody who was brave and strong, right? Who wants to be brave and strong under those conditions? But
Nobody.
Anyway, so what happened was for decades, for 3 decades, they thought he was AWOL. So there was a certain amount of shame that we adopted. But you know, I wasn't ashamed of my brother, but it was like, that was, it had this stigma.
Right.
I'm in ministry. I get a phone call from somebody in the Army. And what happened was it was before the DNA testing.
Right.
They had taken bodies and they were all stored in a warehouse in Hawaii.
Oh, wow.
And so they were slowly taking these bodies out and identifying them through the DNA testing.
Right.
So they go to DNA test a body, and the body they tested, they thought they had buried.
Oh, really?
My brother was wrongly buried in misidentified in someone else's grave for years. And so my point of that, so the one part of the story was filled with shame and upset and confusion. And then he was, what do you call it?
Exonerated.
He was exonerated.
Yep.
And I gotta thank the Army, because we weren't looking. They brought it to our attention. They flew in all the siblings, and we buried him in Arlington Cemetery. But the feeling of, because we talked about reframing before we got on the show today. So one frame of the story was that it was shame, and he was, and he was a coward. But now the new frame, reframing it, was that he was truly a hero of sorts. It was very, very dramatic. It was in the news, on the television, and all that, because it was a bit of a big deal. It was like a Lifetime story.
Well, I'm so glad we brought up reframing, because so many times when I meet with people, they want to know why this happened. Why did this happen? And basically what I tell people is, pick an empowering reason. Pick a story that's going to lift your spirits or make you feel better, because the truth is, there's always 3 truths in the room. There's your truth, there's my truth, and there's the absolute truth. So I can always frame a situation in a way that is uplifting. And if I really believe at the highest truth of all existence is a presence for good and it's love, then I have to believe this presence is weaving all of this unfolding in a way that's going to make sense. I may not be able to see it, but I believe that outside of my frame of view is a bigger story playing out, and a collective healing on a level that will make it all fade back into God and into love and into the wholeness that is the truth of us. And I just made it up, but it works for me. It works. Well, so if it works for me and you like it, take it.
And it works because the brain doesn't know the difference. Your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagined reality.
No.
So if you're going to imagine stuff, imagine it in your favor.
Right.
Imagine it in your favor.
Change that story.
Yeah.
It will change how you vibrate, how you show up. I remember I was at work for many years, this job where, they should have promoted me. I had that story going on. And I was upset and angry all the time and edgy. I was that employee. And then one day I decided I was tired of being miserable. And I thought, well, I'm going to give this job 3 more months, and I'm going to show up really positive every day. And I did. And everyone's like, what happened to you?
Where'd the other guy go?
I'm giving it 3 months, and if it doesn't turn around. And you know what happened? I got promoted. But but I
Well,
changed
and
my story.
that's an old piece of advice from Napoleon Hill. It was be bigger than than your job. If you want out, grow out of the position.
Grow out of the story you're telling
Yeah.
yourself about it so that it can come in.
Yeah.
Well, we have some audience members here today, and I asked them, I'm going to invite them to ask any questions. We'll make some up. It's okay. Anything you'd like to ask us? Eileen looks like she's saying something.
I'm close.
She's close to a question.
It's formulating. What would be the first step when somebody recognizes, oh, something isn't working and I really need to go to figure it out?
What would be the
feeling? So what would be the first step for something?
So what is the first step when somebody kind of goes, oh, I really need to figure this out and heal this, take care of it? What would you tell them is the first step?
Gentleness.
I like that.
Gentleness.
Yeah. Because
too often we confuse the first step with self-deprecating ideas that I did something wrong and I'm not worth it. So it really needs to start with a gentleness. Yeah, I'm feeling this way, but I deserve to be free and in a very gentle way. And I would say, don't walk the path alone. Now, I keep saying things I feel like I'm not going to be very popular on your show, but because I know that a lot of people love groups and love, affinity groups. But I wouldn't go to a group that's attached to their pain.
Yes.
If you're going to be in a group, find a group that is, you're going to feel the pain and then move out of it. Right. I just wouldn't stay someplace where they keep repeating the story of pain. Because then that becomes your identity, and your identity becomes your reality.
Yes.
So I would find a group, and I would find a loving place to feel safe and to tell your story, because telling the story in and of itself in a loving way, when unattached to anything else, that in and of itself can freeze the energy that essence of you can be revealed. So it can be that, but start with self-compassion and self-empathy and gentleness. It's almost like you go, oh, okay, I'm going to take care of my heart, I'm
going to take care of and I deserve it.
Yeah.
Because I think so many times we talk ourselves out of deserving self-care and that moment to pour out our story as if we are saying too much, we're being too much to talk about ourselves.
Especially as women.
Right.
As soon as we're big, we're loud, instead of just being bold. And the truth is, my current mantra for myself is I won't use the expletive, but I am unstoppable. I'm a Jersey girl. I am effing unstoppable.
Hello.
Unstoppable.
Yes, you are. High fiving right here.
There you go.
Yes.
Right. And then that's enough to remind me of okay, stop playing small, because the truth is, even if it's just about the book and just about this work, I meet too many unhappy, miserable people in pain. I can't play small. If I want to actually be part of the healing of humanity, I got to be willing to be out there.
Playing small robs the world of your light, and it serves nobody.
Yeah, and you have certainly, I mean, you have a lovely audience, and you have certainly done well for yourself. I want to just compliment you on your work and what you've been doing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Absolutely.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, it takes boldness. Yeah. It takes boldness to, and you can't, you can't. I have it's been hard for me because I haven't been accepted, and I had to stop caring about being accepted.
If you want to do anything of any value in this world, you're going to have critics. Yeah. Otherwise, you haven't made a big enough impact.
Right. That's right.
So, Reverend Michelle, real quick, how can people connect with you?
Oh, well, I'm Rev Jersey Girl on Facebook. My email is revjerseygirl@gmail.com, and my education nonprofit is the Planned Happiness Institute, where we produce and bring out all the shadow courses, the forgiveness courses, and other things. It's that's my go-to. And I have a workshop that's coming up in just a couple of weeks, and it is Close the Loops. And it's actually born out of the forgiveness course. It is a simple 3-hour class that the point of it is for us to take charge and to complete, when you have broken promises or incomplete things or things that are left unsaid or all of that, this 3-hour thing is to help provide tools so that individuals can close the loop. Like I called up a friend. We were supposed to be doing something together. And I called her up and I said, it appears that you might not be as invested as I thought. And I said, maybe we should just call it done. And she said, yeah, you're right. And it was there didn't have to be any judgment or it didn't have to be pain. And I didn't have to say, oh, you didn't keep your word. It's just like, it seems like you're not invested.
Could just make it that
Done.
easy. And we have some beautiful people behind us who are showing up on the show. So we're just going to say hello. You're on Change Your Story, Change Your Life. We're almost done.
Well, here they go.
There they are.
There they
Hello. We're almost done. So thank you, Reverend Michelle, for
you're
being on the show.
welcome.
And thank you for doing the work.
Oh, you're welcome.
The work,
You're
the
welcome.
shadow work.
Yeah, and when I get my new show started in October on the same network, we don't even have a name for it yet, but we're going to have you on also.
I hope
Have
so.
you on.
I
Yes.
would love that. I would love that. Absolutely. I also have a few things coming up real quick. Eat, pray, live. Who's sick and tired of being sick and tired?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Sign me up.
Yeah. I went on a health journey about 1.5 years ago. I healed my high blood pressure, my fatty liver, my undiagnosed neurological condition, and I lost 40 pounds and kept it off. And I put everything that I learned into this program. It's a mind, body, spirit program. And if you want more energy, more clarity, and you want to get back on track with your practices, I hope you'll join me on August 26th. There it is right there, 9:30. It's going to be 3 hours. So if you go to my website, speakteachinspire.com, you can sign up there. And I really hope you take this opportunity to do this for yourself, because here's what I know. You can have all the money. You can have the best strategy in the world to up-level your life, but if you don't have the energy, you're not going to do it. You're just not. So all roads start there. So if that interests you, please join me. I promise it's going to change your life. And we've had some amazing results with the program so far.
Lovely.
Coming up next week, we're going to have Shay Michelle Davis on the show, who's commented here several times, and she's going to be starting a New Thought Media Network show at the end of the month as well. So we're super excited to have her as well. And lastly, again, Rise and Speak program. I'm only taking 9 people in the class. It's going to be an online program. It's going to be powerful. I think I have 3 people that already want to sign up. So I think it's going to fill pretty quickly. It's going to start September 7th. It's going to be a Thursday night program, and it's going to go for 7 weeks. So I just want to say some closing thank yous here. I want to thank Laura Brzezinski, who is now our show producer for the show.
Laura.
Thank you, Laura. I also want to thank New Thought Media Network for hosting this show and allowing all of these beautiful stories to get out into the world. And until we meet again next Wednesday, 11 p.m. Pacific. 11 a.m. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad I have the crowd here. I think my brain just shut off. 11 p.m.
AM.
I keep looking at Pacific and saying PM. Anyhow, until then, share your light, share your story.
And donate money to New Thought Media
And
Network.
donate to New Thought Media. Let's keep this going.
They're
yes.
worthy.
Yes. All right. Thank you, audience. Thank you.
Thanks for watching.